Hi again, and welcome back to FSD TV. I'm your host, Mark Sonny, and today I'm going to introduce Brendan Ledden, who's going to show us how gravity exerts its force upon everything. So, Brendan, take it away.
Good day. My name is Mr. Ledden. I teach at Laguna Road. I teach 5th grade GATE there, and today we're going to be working on a science lesson, matter and interactions, and we're going to develop a model, and we're going to try to prove that gravity pulls an object directly to the ground, and that there's particles that are too small to see that can affect change. So our first thing we're going to talk about is gravity will always pull you down. On my slide here, I have a picture of a tennis ball and a crumbled piece of paper. And what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be trying to think like a scientist. A scientist will always question. So I have my friend Gage. Gage is holding a tennis ball for me. And I'm going to take a piece of paper, a regular piece of paper, and I'm going to crumble it up so that it's very similar in shape to my tennis ball. And I'm going to ask a question, because scientists ask questions. If the tennis ball and the paper ball get dropped from the same height at the same time, which will hit the ground first? Okay. So we have these two objects. But before we begin, before we do our experiment, we're going to take a little vocabulary break. Because when we're talking about gravity, we want to talk about mass. Gage is also holding two objects. Mass is often confused with weight, but weight is a little different. Mass basically is the quantity of matter, you can read on the slide with me, which a body contains, so how dense it is, how much matter how much matter is in it. For example, the soccer ball, you've probably all have seen a soccer ball. It has a leather outside, but it's mostly filled with air on the inside, so it's pretty light. This kettlebell, even though it's smaller, weighs about 20 pounds. So it's heavier even though it's smaller. So weight and mass are different. Mass is how much materials and how much matter is in a item. So coming back to this, we're going to observe that the tennis ball feels like it has more mass, more weight than my paper. So the next thing we do is thinking like a scientist is we have to make a hypothesis. An hypothesis is an educated prediction. When dropped at the same time from the same height, which will hit the ground first? So this is an opportunity for you to come up with your prediction. And before we do the experiment, one more time, we're going to look at science and history. Around 1590, so about 400 years ago, there was a gentleman named Galileo Galilei, and he made the hypothesis that mass did not matter, that if these dropped at the same time, they would hit the ground at the same time. Before that, for about 2,000 years, Aristotle, a Greek philosopher, thought that it did matter. So today we're going to experiment to see who was right. Okay, so we're going to do our experiment. I'm going to take them here at the same time, and we're going to drop on 3. 1, 2, 3. So now we have to, as a scientist, we think like a scientist, we have to analyze. We have to analyze what just happened. From our experiment, we can see that the tennis ball, even though it was more massive than the paper ball, we analyzed that the paper and the ball were the same general shape. We saw that the paper and the ball fell at the same rate. They actually hit the ground at the same time. And we most importantly saw that gravity pulled them both directly down, which is what we're trying to prove. The last thing we're going to do as a scientist is we're going to report and record our findings so that other scientists around the world can repeat the experiment and prove the findings. Remember Galileo? It just looks like Galileo was correct. You just repeated the thought experiment around 430 years ago, so 430 years later. His findings match yours. Mass does not matter. So if I was to drop the soccer ball and the kettlebell, even though the kettlebell is significantly heavier, they would hit the ground at the same time, and they pulled objects downward. But scientists never stop thinking, so they have to ask more questions. So we're going to go again. Question 1. What if the paper wasn't smashed into a ball? What if I just had a regular paper, excuse me real quick while I get the tennis ball again, and I was to drop them? Would the same experiments, would the same results happen? So we have to observe that the tennis ball still has more mass. The paper has the same amount of mass as the crumbled paper, but it's in a different shape. And we have to come up with our new hypothesis. Going from what Galileo said, these should basically hit the ground at the same time. We want to hopefully repeat our findings. So this is a chance to come up with your prediction. So we'll do our experiment. Uh-oh. So we have to go to step 4. We have to analyze. What changed? What stayed the same? The tennis ball still has more mass than the paper ball. The paper and the ball were not in the same general shape this time. The paper and the ball did not fall at the same rate, and gravity pulled them both down. But the paper moved back and forth. That's what scientists call a clue. So we still have to go to step 5, which was record and report our findings so that other scientists can repeat the experiment and prove our findings. So different results lead to more questions. And more questions are, what made the paper fall slower? What made it move back and forth as it fell? Did we just prove Galileo's hypothesis? These are questions for another day, but there is a hint. There are invisible particles that are too small to see that are getting in the way. This is Brendan Ledden reporting from the fort at Fullerton School District.
Thank you, Brendan, for that exciting lesson on gravity. On behalf of myself and everyone here at the FSD TV studios, I'm Mark Sonny. Have a great day.